Hello and welcome to Secular Spotlight. I'm Chris Line, Rapid Response Counsel at the Freedom from Religion Foundation. I'm here with our Deputy Legal Director, Liz Cavell, to reflect on yet another successful annual convention for FFRF. This year's convention was held in beautiful Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
So all of the speeches we'll be talking about today and more are available to watch on our YouTube channel in full. We'll have a link to the convention playlist in the description below.
We're just going to share some of our favorite moments from speeches from our convention, as well as some of our favorites from other FFRF staff members.
We do an annual convention, and a big part of the goal is to have in-person community with our supporters and our staff, and also the people who have interesting and valuable ideas and perspectives to share about issues, the many issues that affect secularism in America. And so this convention did not disappoint. It was full of really interesting and poignant, I think, ideas and kind of calls to action. And so it's always a very invigorating, exhausting tradition here at FFRF.
Yeah, no, my favorite thing every year is the convention. Just a chance to really recharge, because when we're here doing all the work we're doing, it often feels like it's just us. It's the 10 of us, a couple dozen people, here together, up against all of these huge challenges. And then you go to the convention and you get in a room with the members, you get in the room with other people from other groups who are doing amazing things, the speakers who come from a variety of backgrounds and different ways that they're fighting against what we're seeing in the country. And it just really recharges your batteries and lets us get ready to go for a whole nother year of this, and to keep up on the fight. And I think this year especially felt with sort of the heaviness of what we've been dealing with, Christian nationalism. It's a very heavy year, but I think we had a good mix of speakers that were able to speak to the challenges we're facing, but in a way that makes you feel kind of more hopeful, comes out with some energy, ready to fight back, versus lamenting, what we've had to deal with. So, and we'll obviously touch on all of that here today.
It's an isolating experience, I think, sometimes being non-religious in many parts of the country. And so our supporters often report the same thing, that it's just this amazing experience to gather with people who share your values, but also are not religious, and, trying to share ideas and values that, come from a shared place that's not religion. So
we were there in South Carolina, and our first speaker gave a welcome to South Carolina, and we have a staff member who's going to introduce them.
So I really enjoyed the Silverman speech. It was hilarious. It started off the convention on a positive note, and he told us about how he could not become a notary public because he was an atheist, and he won that court challenge. And the best part of that then was when he did his book signing afterward, he used his actual notary stamp to sign the books rather than autographing them.
I decided to fulfill my lifelong dream of becoming a notary public. Someone who stamps documents. Actually, I learned in 1991 that the South Carolina Constitution prohibits atheists from serving in any public office, and notary public would be the easiest one to challenge. As far as I know, I'm the only one in the history of South Carolina to be rejected as a notary public. On May 27, 1997, the South Carolina Supreme Court ruled unanimously in my favor, nullifying the anti-atheist clause in the South Carolina Constitution.
I have to say, Herb's speech was, if not my favorite, my most surprising. As you can see, Herb's getting on up there in his mature years. He's seen a lot. He's been in the sort of secular activism game for decades, as he told the story of. But his speech was so funny and just charming, and the story he told, he was up there and I was like, Herb for president. I think Herb could do it. He was just so authentic and so funny, and just had such a good sense of humor, even as he told this story of a decades-long grueling fight to be treated equally in the state that he calls home, South Carolina, where, to this day, where he's toiled for decades with just an amazing sense of humor. It was such a good way to open the convention. I loved it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It was a bit surprising. So I actually haven't met Herb a lot, even though I've seen his name, for the whole decade I've been working at FFRF. Right. And he is quite a character with his tuxedo shirt.
Oh my gosh.
And his
10 out of 10.
Yeah, no, he's something else. That was great.
We also heard from one of our chapter presidents, Matthew Krevat. He leads the North Carolina FFRF chapter. It's called Triangle Free Thought Society. Basically just kind of giving voice and letting supporters know about our chapters. FFRF has local chapters around the country that try to bring a more local and community approach to secular advocacy in different parts of the country. And so I think it's always good for our supporters to hear and see some of the local activists doing FFRF outreach kind of on the ground level.
Yeah, I think my understanding is that was a new addition this year, the first time we've had the chapters come up. We've had them introduce people, but to come up and actually talk about the chapters, which is great because the opportunities I've had where I get to travel to a chapter and speak with them are amazing. And it's just great to sort of seed that amongst our other members, see if there are new chapters that could pop up, strengthen them, just, really develop the ground game. Because as we've seen, this Christian nationalism affects the whole nation, and there's a lot of local places where it would be nice to have people working on the ground.
Yeah, and again, trying to bring some community to people who feel isolated, but are interested in what FFRF does. It can be really nice to have a local chapter, especially an active one, in your area where you can actually meet or know other human beings in your area who are concerned and working on the same issues as you, and also kind of forming community.
Yeah, so the next step after that, you introduced Nancy Northup, the CEO of Center for Reproductive Rights, who received our Freedom from Fundamentalist Religion Award.
That's right.
She started a theme that kind of went throughout our program of having a couple of religious people who were there during our atheist convention. Both her and John Fugelsang kind of pointed out in their talks that they were not atheists, but coming to this convention, and obviously we saw both through her speech and John's that we share a lot of values with these people, and that this is a battle, particularly for reproductive rights, that extends well beyond just the atheist community. It is a battle for everyone to uphold those rights for women.
Yeah, she talked all about the post-Dobbs landscape, all the work that repro rights groups like the Center for Reproductive Rights is doing. It's so disheartening that we're going backwards on so many of these issues, to this pre-Roe versus Wade existence that was supposed to have been vanquished in the 70s. And so she did talk a lot about not only how groups like hers are fighting back on the legal front, but also just how reproductive rights allies are still delivering care and making sure that we don't turn into the pre-1972 America. So it was heartening, and it was a great sort of early speech to set the tone for the weekend.
Yeah, and that tone continued right into FFRF's very own Mickey Dollens, who was able to give a rousing speech about how everyday citizens can fight back against Christian nationalism. He talked about civic engagement and showing free thinkers how they can lobby, protest, and even run for office in our secular democracy. Just a really great moment early on of just getting people pumped of hey, you're going to hear some rough stuff this weekend about what's going on, and you can fight back. And not just being general about it, oh, you can fight back. Here's how.
He's also a Oklahoma politician himself, so he just has a really unique perspective and a unique way of approaching citizen activism.
Yeah, and then we continued on with that theme of what can we do and engagement with our FFRF legal highlights, of which you were one of the presenters.
That's right.
On that with Patrick Elliott, Sam Grover, our litigation counsel, and Sammy Lawrence. Obviously, you guys went through the major highlights of the lawsuits we've been filing, the wins we've been getting in court, and the on-the-ground violations that we're handling every day. We get to really just highlight all of the work that the legal team, does all year long.
People do really love to hear that part of the convention every year.
Yeah, and then Katherine Stewart, FFRF frequent speaker,
Yes.
gave another talk, this time related to her book, Money, Lies, and God, where she traced how Christian nationalism, corporate greed, and disinformation have merged into a coordinated campaign to undermine democratic institutions and the concentration of power in the hands of the few. So it was a very politically connected talk, kind of really just highlighting the background of what's going on in this moment with Christian nationalism and kind of giving name to it and explaining how we got here.
Right. Catherine's a really amazing sort of in-depth journalist and has really kind of made it her beat to cover Christian nationalism and especially the sort of shadowy and dark money and, where political corruption and religious extremism kind of overlap.
Yeah, and that was rightfully so, pretty heavy. But what's nice is throughout the convention, we had a lot of music that kind of helped add some levity. Dan performed multiple songs. We had Godless Gospel perform 3 songs, and our one of our headliners on Friday night, we had Roy Zimmerman do his sort of parody songs. He's got razor sharp musical comedy, talking about science denial, Christian nationalism, LGBTQ rights. He does some songs about vaccines, stuff like that.
Honestly, this is one of the things that over the years that I've been here, I've loved to see grow at the convention is just sort of the music. We've always had Dan Barker, former
Gospel,
Pentecostal children's music writer, who's turned his talents towards making secular music and creating musical projects like Godless Gospel, which is an awesome kind of reinventing of a gospel music tradition, but for secularists.
And so after that, then we had Mary Trump speak, and we have a staff member to introduce that clip as well.
Yeah.
A speaker I was eagerly anticipating to listening to at our convention in Myrtle Beach was Mary Trump. And not only did she meet my expectations, she far exceeded them because she was witty, profound, and engaging all at the same time. While she focused in good part on her famous uncle, i.e. the occupant of the White House, she had a much broader theme about democracy and authoritarianism and what we can do as citizens to combat the state of the United States currently.
What are we fighting against? Some of this is obvious. We are faced currently with a very real possibility that this country will complete its slide into fascist autocracy, with a leader who is the most corrupt, cruel, and incompetent man who has ever walked this planet, and trust me, I know. A man who has the support of a political party that shares his quest for power and money, and a corrupt, illegitimate supermajority of the Supreme Court that has not just willingly, but gleefully chipped away at the foundations of our rights and our institutions. The grievance of the would-be dictator co-opts the language of the oppressed and those of us who struggle to maintain equanimity in the face of such an onslaught against everything we value. The grievance attempts to silence our pain and nullify our struggles, but we must refuse at every step along the way to be silenced. We must continue to resist no matter the cost, and we must reject wholesale their strategy to enact a set of policies that is antithetical to what we stand for as a country, to engage in politics that has as its sole mission dividing us at a time we most need to be united, to bastardize the majority religion in this country that teaches its followers that their God is a hateful God, and that anger and disdain and vengeance are more Christian than love and acceptance and understanding.
Later on, Mary Trump received our Emperor Has No Clothes Award. Her talk was definitely one of the highlights of the convention for sure.
So Mary Trump wrapped our Friday night program. Then Saturday morning, we kind of opened the program with a series of awards that involved young people, students, young activists. Everyone really loves and is so invigorated seeing some of the young activists and student activists that are actually, standing up in their public schools or doing some sort of like secular activism that gives our older membership cohort a lot of hope. So we had our Out of God's Closet Memorial Student Activist Award. It's an endowed award that we gave to Bailey Harris. She's a teenager / author of children's secular books. And she gave a really sweet speech about, her journey from being a child to now an older teenager, and her book writing and publishing career. It was really charming.
Yeah, the cool thing about Bailey Harris, you'll know this, is that we did have her 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So we did get to see that growth of when she was much younger, and then now as a teenager, still working on her books. Obviously older now, but just it's cool to see other people grow up. Continuing with that theme, and the secular movement moving forward, Eli Frost received our Beverly and Richard Hermanson Award. And he himself is going to be a great activist, I think, someday. I mean, he already is, but he'll be even more so, something to look forward to. And we have a staff member to introduce that video clip as well.
I really enjoyed listening to Eli Frost. He's such a good speaker, and actually all of those student activists are so inspiring.
Grace Church does not care about people. Grace Church does not care about people, and seemingly as a reward for their bigotry, our district was paying them over $30,000 a year to host graduation. I was taught by my parents to treat others how you want to be treated, with respect, which I thought was a Christian value, but here we are. And Grace Church can't even muster common human decency. I fought for this change because I will never let anyone be discriminated against in my community if I can help it.
We introduced 3 of our student scholarship essay contest winners. That is always really, I think, fun too for members to see, because we have several essay competitions throughout the year that are geared towards high school students, some towards college students, some towards older students, but they're all printed and run in our newspaper, Free Thought Today. Mm-hmm. And so supporters will oftentimes see and read a lot of the essay contest winners, and just to have some of them there in person to read their essay and kind of connect and answer questions at the convention, I think is a real treat for a lot of our members. We have another one of our staff members reflecting a little bit on the student scholarship essay winners.
My favorite group of speakers was actually our student activists and student essay winners. I thought all of them were incredibly inspiring, and I loved hearing them talk.
When I walk down the street, I carry more than a body. I carry generations of struggle, a patchwork of identities that make me a walking target. Black, woman, queer, non-religious. To whom do I pose a threat by simply existing? The answer stares back. White Christian nationalism. Among the many freedoms under siege, reproductive rights cut the deepest into my life, my future, and my body. White Christian nationalism does not just oppose abortion, it seeks to control people like me under the illusion of morality.
That silence, the failure to protect or affirm us, is how white Christian nationalism operates, not only through policies, but through culture, permission, and erasure. Many of the students who mocked DEI efforts came from homes and churches steeped in Christian nationalism ideology. These communities preached colorblindness over equity, insist America was founded as a Christian nation, and claim racism ended with the Civil Rights Act. To them, DEI wasn't about justice. It's a threat to their worldview.
White Christian nationalism is, to me, indistinguishable from the fundamental American ideology that bred such abhorrent institutions as the Atlantic slave trade and state-sanctioned genocide against the indigenous population. These systems were founded in the belief that Black and indigenous people are subhuman races, that we are incompatible with the superior European and Christian values of our oppressors.
So after the student essay winners and the student activist awards, we gave out another really kind of seminal FFRF award, and that's the Evijit Roy Courage Award. We gave this award to Mubarak Bala, the president of Humanists of Nigeria. He could not be there in person because he is living in exile, fighting for his life while he tries to protect himself from blasphemy laws in his home country. His speech was harrowing. He talked just very matter-of-factly but compellingly about his whole ordeal. All he is trying to do in his home country is live authentically as a humanist. He was an amazing speaker and presence at the convention, and his speech was definitely a highlight.
Yeah, after he talked, we gave our Free Thought Heroine Award to Chrissy Stroop, who's a writer. She traces her journey from evangelical school to leading counter-narratives about the Christian right. She unpacked Christian indoctrination, post-truth politics, DEI and CRT moral panics, trans rights backlash, and why pluralism and storytelling are essential for democracy. It's important to note Chrissy is a trans woman. That's why that's, so important to her, obviously, and important to us at FFRF.
Yeah, Chrissy's been writing for years, was kind of an early contributor to the ex-evangelical movement of just writers and people sharing their stories who grew up in strictly fundamentalist religious households and then deconstructed from that upbringing, usually in some sort of grappling with their own identity or sexual orientation. Chrissy Stroop, obviously, as a trans woman, trying to reconcile her upbringing from a really fundamentalist evangelical household, including going to fundamentalist schools, to her, her life now as really a kind of scholar and thinker and writer about the Christian right and the ex-evangelical movement. So her speech was fun somehow.
Yep, and people should check out her speech and check out her writing.
Yeah.
She writes great stuff.
One of the new traditions at our convention that I think is actually amazing, the Secular Legislative Panel. It is our attempt to bring together a few, this year 3, secular legislators from state houses across the country. So this year we had Kansas State Representative Heather Meyer, Minnesota State Rep Andy Smith, and Vermont State Rep Monique Priestley. These are openly non-religious elected officials just talking about their experience in these vastly different political environments. There are so many things that are common to their experiences, so many things that are different. And it's also, I think, just an amazing experience for a room full of mostly other non-religious people to just sort of see that representation reflected. I always just find it like a really amazing part of the program.
I think my favorite part is just sort of seeing things from the legislator perspective. To hear like, oh, they think and feel the same way we do.
And I just think it is really just like uplifting to hear from them, and also just to sort of like see yourself reflected in an elected official as a non-religious American. It's not easy to find.
Yeah, then after that, we gave our Clarence Darrow Award to Jamelle Bouie, New York Times columnist, and we have a staff member to introduce that.
I really enjoyed the talk by Jamelle Bouie. I think that in addition to calling out the sort of the false and mythical narrative of the white Christian founding of America. I think he did a good job of taking materials from the founding fathers and attempting to universalize them rather than simply making them sort of an ethnic conclave.
Part of, I think, the task in this moment is to rediscover the values of the Declaration, rediscover the values of the Gettysburg Address, rediscover the values that are part of, I think, some of our greatest moments as a nation, and stand for them as strongly and as proudly as we can, and rebuke those that say that the United States is in some way just another country, just another place where those who belong according to some arbitrary measure are those that deserve to be on top.
Yeah, Jamelle Bouie was obviously a huge name for our convention. People were really excited to hear from him. My favorite talk that another staffer also picked as their favorite, you'll hear from in a minute, was Harvard professor Stephen Levitsky. He is a professor and a scholar who writes about democracy and authoritarianism and just political science and government around the world. But he's also the co-author of the book How Democracies Die and Tyranny of the Minority. He talked about obviously the democratic backslide that we're living through here in America. But what I loved about his speech was that he really had a way of speaking to like the urgency of the moment. He really described from his sort of expert perspective how far into authoritarianism we are in America, but also he somehow had a really kind of hopeful and like galvanizing message and tone about resistance and what has been done to beat back authoritarian slides, what can be done and what is being done here in America. It actually happened to be the weekend of the No Kings protests, the weekend of our convention. So that was also sort of a really interesting kind of case study and, item for people to kind of reflect on and think about in the context of all these talks about democracy at the convention. So here is another staff member stealing my favorite speech and giving some reflections and introducing a clip from Levitsky.
My favorite part of the convention would be like asking for who's my favorite child. But I do remember that funny moment when Stephen Levitsky got up and said he had never been in a room with so many atheists since his bar mitzvah. I thought that was really funny.
I don't think I've been surrounded by this many atheists since my bar mitzvah. There is now a clear, well-known cost to opposing the Trump administration. Hundreds of thousands of Americans who might have engaged in some form of legal opposition behavior are now at least thinking twice about it because they know there's a risk associated with opposition. As Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski put it a couple of months ago, I quote, "We are all afraid." It's quite a statement, but we are in a time and a place I certainly have not been in before. I'll tell you, I'm oftentimes very anxious about using my voice, Senator Murkowski says, because retaliation is real.
So we ended up the night and the convention with John Fugelsang, who talked about his book, Separation of Church and Hate. It was a hilarious and heartfelt keynote speech. It was truly amazing. It was very funny. He's a very heartfelt person. I have a lot of respect for him because he did have to come into this room full of atheists. Yes. He's not an atheist. He's very much so religious.
Yes.
And he did so without hiding his religion. He didn't, you could see how someone might come in and like downplay their religion a little bit in a situation like that. He did not. He was fully himself and yet still fully likable. We've got a staff member to officially introduce some clips from his talk.
The speaker that stood out the most to me was John Fugelsang. He is A, just super hilarious, and B, listening to him talk about his new book about separating hate and the church was really, really inspiring and great. And I think he brings this very down-to-earth and relatable perspective to everything that really shows why the separation of state and church is so important to everybody, regardless of whether you're non-religious or religious, and he makes it like very digestible.
The loudest, meanest Christians in our society don't know the Bible all that well, and they're counting on the rest of us not knowing the Bible all that well so they can bring about their agenda. Millions of nice people who were raised Christian have grown up, as you well know, to find this movement we were taught was about peace and love and empathy and forgiveness has somehow morphed into a mean, white supremacist, tax-free clique that uses Jesus as a prop while legislating against his actual teachings. And Project 2025 is an attempt to control the entire level of freedom in this country based on their shitty, anti-Jesus, right-wing interpretation of the Bible. They don't fight for God. They don't fight for anything Jesus actually says in the book. They don't really care about religious freedom or Satan. Their only agenda is conservative religious power. That is the only religion, and we are aligned against this.
John Fugelsang was a big name for the convention. He closed out the convention on Saturday night, I think with like a really great message for coalition between progressive believers and non-believers in order to work towards progressive ends and defending secular democracy. So it was an awesome note to end the night on. And he was so lovely because he came out to the bar after his speech. Not many speakers do that, especially at the John Fugelsang level, and visited with staff and just kind of, unwound and talked with everyone more at the bar, just kind of let loose and talking about the issues with staff, I think like goes a long way. People just like are so charmed by speakers who are willing to just like stick around and chat and make friends.
It was great. So that wrapped up the convention, and that wraps up this week's episode of Secular Spotlight. Again, all the speeches we talked about today are available on our YouTube channel. There's a link in the description for that playlist.
And if you'd like to support our mission, consider becoming a member at ffrf.org. Please like this episode, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss an episode. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.
Hi, my name's Alyssa Jarrett. I have been a member of FFRF for over a decade. I'm a lifetime member. For anyone who wants to make sure that we have a constitutional democracy and maintains a secular culture, this is the organization for you. I'm so proud of the work they do, and I feel lucky to be considered a part of it.